thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I know that some of you tune in on a regular basis, and I appreciate that. If you're new, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe down below. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like you to tune in. If there's something that you want to see, if there's a topic you want me to cover, send me an email, put a comment down below, let me hear about it. I want to do a couple of things. This particular channel that I'm working on here, it focuses on magic, it focuses on mentalism, but it also, I want to explore my own history and how I got to this point. And I've been going back and reflective and going back and looking at some of the old footage. I've been doing magic since, well, the show and tell class, if you want to consider that the show and tell class where I did the magic kit that I got for Christmas that year, that was 1968. I don't really count that. It was really 1970, 1971 that I started to do shows, maybe 72, 73. I was a teenager and I started to do birthday party shows, and I loved it, and the kids loved it, and I did a lot of that kind of show and continue to do that kind of show. I still like it. But it was around that time that I started performing, and the performances evolved over a period of time. Now, all of those performances are gone, basically. They're in my memory, and that's it. When I started working with an assistant, which was, the late 80s, maybe, when I started working with an assistant, I started to videotape some of the material that we were doing. Now, it's hard to imagine now, looking back. It's hard to imagine what it meant or what it was to video record a performance. We didn't have digital photography. We didn't have the kind of equipment, affordable equipment that you can get today that takes pretty good images. Back in those days, I was using the best camera I could afford. It was a very expensive camera. It was a VHS camera. And the quality of those images is pretty bad. But some of those performances, some of the material that I did back in those days, I will never do again. But on this channel, one of the things I want to do is go back and explore who I was and what I did and how it got me to this point. And part of that is looking at some of that old footage. So all that to apologize for what you're about to see. I found a show that I had done in Lititz, Pennsylvania in October of 1990. My wife worked with me on that show, and I was a youth pastor at the time, a part-time youth pastor, and one of the young ladies in the youth group worked with me on that show, and you'll see both of those in the video. Janice is my wife. Erica is the young lady from the youth group. And we did a couple of things that I want to share with you, but on this particular video, I want to show you what's called the sliding knot. Now this is one of the reasons I want to show you these things is because they were influences on me when I saw them. Now I don't. If I had this to do over again, I certainly would. And isn't that always true? I mean, you write a book, right? I've written 2 novels, by the way. And as soon as they're out and they're published and they're out there and people are reading them, I realize, if I had it to do over again, I would do this differently. And when I look back in old performance video, certainly I would do something differently. But let me tell you a little bit of the history of this particular effect. The first time I saw it, and I think the first time anyone saw it, because I don't think it existed prior to this, Doug Henning did it. I don't know if he did it on a special or if he did it on a special appearance. I don't know where he did it. I don't know where I saw it, but I do remember Doug Henning doing it. And it blew me away. I mean, think about this. The cut and restored rope is an effect that has been around for hundreds of years, literally hundreds of years. You take a rope and you cut it in half and you restore it. And that's a great effect. And it speaks to us about regeneration, and it speaks to us about restoration, and all of those feelings and all of that meaning can be brought to bear in a cut and restored rope routine. But everybody was familiar with the cut and restored rope. Doug Henning was a performer that wanted to create wonder above all. That was his mission. And so he didn't want to do simply a cut and restored rope. He wanted to take it a step further. And so I remember watching him do this. He had one person holding one end of the rope and another person holding the other end of the rope. And that's kind of the model that I worked with. You can tie the rope around two chairs if you want to. You can do it in a lot of different ways. But I remember Doug doing it. It made an impact on my life, and my hope was that in performing a similar effect, and I say similar effect because I realized my methodology, the effect is the same, but the method is different. My method's different than what Doug did. But here he is. He's got two people holding either end of the rope, and he comes out and he takes a knife and he runs it along the rope, and he cuts the rope at a certain point, ties it, and everybody's thinking cut and restored rope, right? So it's just, to me, it's mind-boggling. I'm not gonna. I tell you what. I want you to see the video, so I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to go any further. Let me give you a little bit of the history of this thing, though, before you actually see it, before you see me do it. Doug did it, and at the time, I'd never seen it before. I don't think anybody had ever seen it before. It turns out Paul Curry is the one who invented this particular effect. Paul Curry. Now, for those of you who are interested in magic, and you know what, I'm hoping that people watch this who are not interested in becoming magicians. Maybe you're curious. Maybe you're curious about me. You're curious about magic. I'd love to have you. The other type of audience member might be somebody who does have a familiarity with magic. You do know the history. You do know certain effects, and hopefully you're familiar with this particular effect. But Paul Curry invented it. He's the same guy that invented Out of This World, a classic in card magic. Out of This World, I remember the first time I saw that effect, a guy named George Sands did it for me. And George had, again, there are literally hundreds of ways to accomplish this effect. In some respects, it's an oil and water type effect. So what's going on is a deck of cards is shuffled, so you have red cards and black cards mixed in, and then a spectator is asked to separate these cards without looking at them. At the end of the effect, the black cards have been separated from the red cards in an absolutely miraculous and mind-blowing way. I think Michael Amar probably has one of the better presentations of this, certainly one of the better methods. In recent years, I mean the last decade or so, Darren Brown did it with images of living and dead people, so he made a living dead test out of it. And many people point to that as a standard bearer in where the effect has gone, because I think after Darren Brown, it might have happened before Darren, but he certainly popularized the idea of moving away from cards, playing cards, and using other things. In his case, he used living and dead people. The photograph of the person on the front and on the back, an indication of whether they were alive or dead. So you looked at the photograph and you separated the photographs, and when you turned them over, the deads were over here, the livings were over here. Very creepy, and Darren does some really creepy stuff. But this was a standard out of the world effect that he brought a new presentation to. And I like the idea of using images, especially as a mentalist, and he is a mentalist. If you can get away from playing cards, it's a good thing. And so that's what he did. But anyway, Paul Curry invented this thing, and Doug Henning performed it. And then later, Jim Steinmeyer, I believe it was Jim Steinmeyer, invented the method that I use in this video that you're going to see. So I did the Jim Steinmeyer version. Since that time, now this was October of 1990. So Doug performed it in the 80s somewhere. I don't think he did it in the 70s. I think he did it in the early 80s. So it's maybe less than 10 years, but maybe 8, 9 years after I saw Doug Henning do it. The Jim Steinmeyer version comes along, and this is what you're about to see. Since that time, there have been improvements on this particular effect, just as there were supposedly improvements on the Paul Curry Out of This World. Many people will argue that you can't improve on the Paul Curry version. And that might be true. I mean, a lot of effects, if you go back to the history and the starting place of these effects, it's hard to, sometimes it's hard to improve. We're gonna do a session on the sawing in half illusion and P.T. Selbit and his original version. When a performer, Kaylin and Ginger, I think, when they came out with the original Selbit version that was later called the Wakeling version because Alan Wakeling made it popular, people were blown away. They were blown away. But that was the original version of the effect. And so they're like, oh, that's so new. And that's the thing about magic. The old can become new again if it hasn't been seen in a very long time. But Selbit did that kind of sawing where the person gets into a crate and they're tied with ropes so that the person can't move, and then it's sawed down through. It's an amazing thing to see. It's referred to now as the Wakeling version, but P.T. Selbit is the one who actually invented it. Wakeling made it popular, and then later Kaylin and Ginger brought it to the masses, and then lots of performers were out doing it. Same with Out of This World. Paul Curry invented it, and then everyone's had their different take and different versions of it. But certainly Paul Curry's version is fantastic. So this is not the Paul Curry version of the rope trick that you're about to see. It's the Jim Steinmeyer version. There are other versions in recent years. I mean the last 20 years or so. Gentleman named Pavel invented a version of this called the walking knot. In Pavel's version, the rope can be cut and then the knot slid to various places along the rope and shown at those places. It's a wonderful thing to see. I will try to search out some of these videos on YouTube and put their links below so you can take a look at the various versions. Again, I'm not really proud of what you're about to see. It's one of those things. But this channel is really, listen folks, I'm going to be 60 soon. I'm going to be 59 in June. I'm looking back. I'm looking back on my life at this point. Hopefully I have lots of performance years in front of me. I'm a mentalist today. I don't do this stuff anymore, which is one of the reasons why I'm bringing it here. I do mind reading today, and that's about it. I can't really... I want all my creative energy in that area, so that's what I'm doing. I'm focused on as performance. I'm focused on mind reading. So there's really not an opportunity for me to perform this today because my audiences expect me to do mind reading, and that's what I specialize in. But it's a fantastic effect, and it's one of those effects that had a great impact on me. Doug said that the art of the magician was to create wonder. And if we live with a sense of wonder, our lives will be filled with joy. This was one of those effects that brought joy to my life because it made me wonder. I saw it and I had one of those moments. And I loved it from that moment on, and I wanted to bring that to audiences, so I did. I performed this for a few years. It never really got the reactions that I was hoping for. I think what was happening, and it's hard to know sometimes, but I think what was happening was audiences, again, on some level, were familiar with the cut and restored rope, and when I did this effect, they weren't exactly sure how to take it. I think that was one of the problems with the effect. But it's wonderful, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm just going to cut over there. I did want to apologize for the quality of the video you're about to see. It was shot with a fairly inexpensive VHS camera. So now you have VHS tape, right, which is not good quality to begin with. And then I converted that to a digital format, and then in a digital format I edit it so that you can see it. So there's a lot of distortion, there's a lot of graininess, and you know what, I apologize for that, but it's a part of my history. And there's lots of, by the way, let me talk for a second about what I have been able to capture and what I haven't. Over the years, I have not felt comfortable recording private shows, and I've done primarily private shows. So somebody's bringing me into their home or they're bringing me into their special event. I'm not that comfortable setting up cameras to capture the event. There are occasions when I've asked permission to do that, but for the most part I haven't done it. And so on the rare occasion when I've been able to capture a show, I have an archive of those things. I've got many shows over the course of years. Some of them have already been posted on this channel. But this is one. Now I made the recording not at all to broadcast on YouTube. I made the recording so that the team that I worked with, my wife and Erica, we could go back and we could watch it and we could evaluate our performance. And we could say, okay, the next time we do this show, this is what we're going to do differently. This is how we're going to improve. That's one of the great benefits of recording your shows, by the way. You know, you can go back, you can look, you can see where your errors were, and you can make adjustments for the next time. And so that's why we did this. It was a tool for evaluation. It was never intended for broadcast. But at this point in my life, I'm not doing this material anymore. And I look back and I think, oh, this was a valuable part of my history. So I wanted to share it with you. So anyway, without any further delay, please watch, enjoy. Let me know what you think down below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for joining me.
Now, magicians live by codes. A magician can never tell his secrets, and a magician must always do at least one rope trick in every show. Now, personally, I'm not real fond of rope tricks, but I found one that I like a lot, and I'd like to show it to you right now. With the help of my two assistants, Janice and Erica. Now, there are a couple things I want you to notice about this. First of all, you can see the ends at all times. The rope is very tight and very solid. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this knife and I'm going to run it from here down to Janice. And you right there in the front. Would you tell me when to stop? Ready? Stop here. Stop here. All right. Look, you're going to have to give it just a little bit of slack here. Okay, that's good, that's good. Now watch very closely as I take this severed rope and restore it before your very eyes. Ta-da! It's tight. Yeah, it's not much of a trick, is it? No. Well, that's not the trick I wanted to do. I'll tell you what. You there in the white. Yeah. I'm going to take this knife and run it this way. This time you tell me when to stop. Stop right here. I want you to keep your eyes on this point, right here. Don't take your eyes off that point. Watch very closely.